Everyone knows that a bat is not a bird. Bats are beakless, give birth to live young, and then nurse their young with milk until they're self-sufficient. A bat's wings are featherless, and its body is covered with hair. Based upon these characteristics, scientists classify bats as mammals, not birds. Yet twice in the Old Testament, bats are categorized with birds, unclean birds, in Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy 14. The Bible indicates the Israelites were to regard as an abomination among the birds the eagle, vulture, buzzard, falcon, raven, and other birds, including the bat. But bats aren't birds, they're mammals. According to skeptics, the Bible's classification of bats as birds represents one of the scientific difficulties in the Bible. Such categorization is supposedly an obvious contradiction between the Bible and science. Since the bat is, of course, a mammal, not a bird, skeptic Dennis McKenzie listed Leviticus 11:19 as a superb verse to use to take enlightenment to the biblically benighted. How is this not an obvious contradiction between the Bible and science? The elementary answer to these questions is simply that God did not classify animals 3,500 years ago according to our modern classification system. As far back as creation, God has divided animals into very basic natural groups. He made aquatic and aerial creatures on day 5 of creation and terrestrial animals on day 6. Similarly, in the first 23 verses of Leviticus 11, God divided the creatures into land animals, animals that are in the water, birds, and flying insects. He did not divide animals into mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians. In fact, the group of creeping things mentioned later in Leviticus 11 includes both mammals, such as mice, and reptiles, such as lizards. Clearly, then, God divided animals according to their locomotion and environment rather than whether or not they have hair, lay eggs, or nurse their young. Still, some may question why the English word bird is used for the category in which bats are listed. Why not simply call this group of animals the flying creatures? Actually, the term bird in Leviticus 11:13 is translated from the Hebrew hof, which literally means flying creatures. That this word is not used solely for birds is evident from Leviticus 11 verse 20, where it's used alongside the creeping things in reference to the winged creeping things, that is, flying insects. Admittedly, bats and birds have many differences, but they have one major thing in common, the ability to fly. And that is the very characteristic God used to group them together. Why are no other mammals included in this list? Because bats are the only mammals capable of true flight. Another reason why Bible translators have chosen to use the term birds in these passages instead of the more general term flying creatures. The rationale among Bible translators seems to be if 99.9% of all flying creatures are birds, then we'll just use the term birds instead of flying creatures. To accuse God or the Bible writers of categorizing animals incorrectly based upon Linnaeus taxonomy or any other modern method of classifying animals is tantamount to criticizing other people for not organizing their wardrobe or cataloging their books according to your own methods. However a person chooses to organize his books, whether alphabetically, sequentially, or topically, according to the Dewey Decimal Classification System or the Library of Congress classification system, it's a matter of judgment. Likewise, it's extremely unfair to judge ancient classification systems according to modern man's arbitrary standards. Skeptics are wrong for imposing their preconceived standards back on an ancient text. Frankly, placing bats in the category of flying creatures rather than with the land animals, the aquatic creatures, or the creeping things makes perfectly good sense. Bats are, after all, expert flyers, not walkers, crawlers, or swimmers. For the biblical reference to bats to be a true error, he would have had to say something to the effect of, bats are not flying animals. Sadly, one significant question often left unexplored in a discussion of the Bible's treatment of bats and birds is why God classified bats as unclean to begin with. Was this simply due to their eerie outward appearance or because they're nocturnal cave dwellers? Could there be something more, like because bats often carry rabies? It's true that many animals are susceptible to rabies, but bats are especially so. In fact, bats with rabies are so common that if people come in direct contact with bats, doctors recommend seeking emergency care for preventative treatment for rabies. The Bible's classification of bats in a list of birds in the Old Testament is in no way an error. On the contrary, God's instruction to the Israelites to avoid bats coincides perfectly with modern research.